Friends, tonight we are seeking to answer the question, how do I glorify God? That is, how should the love of God in terms of his character be reflected in my life and through my life, and particularly we're talking about marriage, such that a husband is reflecting the love of God to his wife, and his wife is reflecting the love of God to her husband. That's where we're going. I want to stop in two places. I have a reason for that. And so come with me to 1 Corinthians chapter 11, because when you get to the primary passage, Ephesians 5, it's good to go first to, I think, the primary passage in terms of headship and submission. Now, I know the moment I say those two words, I am treading on thin ice, socially. That is, and to take you to an example, I once preached at a wedding in terms of the husband's 5 roles and the wife's 1 role, and I'll tell you why it's 1 role, in terms of submission. And it was fine in terms of dealing with the husband's 5 roles. The moment I got to her role and spoke about submission, you could have heard a pin drop. Not from amazement at God's word, but just how it jars with where our society is at. People do not like to hear the word submission because they equate it to the word slavery. To be submissive to my husband means I need to do everything he tells me to do. That is not what the word means. However, it is important for us to begin at the right place, and so I'm taking you to 1 Corinthians 11. Now, you may remember 1 Corinthians 11 is the beginning of the section that deals with what does it look like for us to have orderly worship in the church. And he's going to get to the whole subject of head coverings. That's where he's going in this particular chapter. And you may remember what follows next in this particular chapter in terms of honoring God collectively is the Lord's table. However, please note, before he even gets to the subject, before he deals with chapter 12, how tongues and interpretation of tongues are to be used, chapter 13, use them with love, back to the subject of tongues, interpretation, prophecy in chapter 14, he goes with a crucial starting point to say everything that follows in terms of the honoring of God collectively begins with verse 3 of 1 Corinthians 11. Let's pick it up from verse 2, where Paul writes to the church at Corinth, "Now I commend you because you remember me in everything and maintain the traditions even as I delivered them to you. But," now I wish we had in the English the means to write the word capital B, capital U, capital T, for that to be the way this works, because he pulls up the handbrake and he brings the car to a stop next to the side of the road, and he turns to you and says, before we even deal with it, let's look at this. But, it is a huge but. And then he says, I want you to understand that the head of every man is Christ, the head of a wife is her husband, and the head of Christ is God. And then he begins with the subject of head coverings. But he starts with, guys, it's crucial that you remember and not forget that, and I always do this, so if you can hold up 4 fingers like that sideways. I was intrigued, Andrew did this, he kind of did this in our Bible study. So if you can hold up 4 fingers like this, what he does is he says, the head of every man is Christ, the head of a wife is her husband, and the head of Christ is God. Can you follow me and do it like that? Here we go. Start with your ring finger, and he starts with the man, and he says the head The head of every man is Christ. Move to number 2. And then the head of a wife, go to Pinky, is her husband, number 3. And the head of Christ is God. I have no idea why he goes in that order. It would be better to go all the way up or all the way down. But he starts with the husband. The head of every man is Christ. The head of a wife is her husband. The head of Christ is God. A picture is worth 1,000 words, so I think that's on. You have? Okay, there we go. Good. That one. There is 1 Corinthians 11 verse 3 in pictorial form. Now you might say, why on earth an umbrella? I'm going to get to that in the next passage. That is the headship or the covering, if you like, of Christ. The husband is under that, the wife is under that, and the children are under that. Children, a different verse, and I wish we could have God above that, the Father, because what you do have is a mutual headship and a mutual submission. So headship works down and submission works up. That is, I submit to the one who's above me, and the head above me is the head over me. That is, one should not think when it comes to dealing with the subject of headship in a family, of a husband over his wife, and the submission of a wife to a husband, one should not think that the husband is free to do whatever he likes, as often is perceived. That is not the case. That is, the husband comes under the headship of Christ. Often the concept is that he can do whatever he likes, and therefore the wife must submit to whatever he wants to do. That is not the case. And this picture shows that you have an ordering from the Father to the Son, to the husband, to the wife, to the children, that is crucial in terms of understanding that God has set this in place. Thus, before he even gets to the contentious subject of tongues, interpretation, prophecy, all of that, he says, guys, don't forget, I want you to understand that the head of every man is Christ, the head of every woman, of a wife is her husband, and the head of Christ is God. That's how it works. Or if you like, do what you like, you can't change that. God has set that in place. It also means that what we're speaking of is a functional headship. A functional headship. So in terms of what is his responsibility over her, there are certain functions. Just as Christ has certain functions under the Father. Please do not equate functional headship with the one is more important than the other. That's not what we're speaking of. Who's more important, the Father or the Son? They are equal, right? Who's more important, the husband or the wife? They're equal. And the moment you talk about headship and submission, very often what quickly comes into the equation is, you're saying my husband is more important than me. And my response is, if Christ is more important than the Father, then that's what I'm saying. No, Christ is not more important than the Father, and the Father not more important than the Son. That is, the Father has tasked the Son to do something, and that's his responsibility. Don't think we're talking about who's more important than the other. Helpful? Good. 1 Corinthians 11 verse 3, it is a primary passage in terms of headship in the home, and indeed an elder's responsibility in the church. That's another category. We'll get to that. Thus, when it comes to who's more important, do not think that because they have different responsibilities, one is more important than the other. Helpful? Good. Let's go to the next passage, and that's Ephesians chapter 5, verse 22. You'll notice in your bulletin, thank you so much, Noreen, she did some size fonting such that could fit in one page, so that you have everything you need in one page. Let me recommend that you tear that out and put it on your fridge, because at some point you're going to say to your husband, look, this is your responsibility. And likewise, husbands, you want to do the same, and you put that on your fridge, and you're going to say at some point, wife, look, this is your responsibility. Good, let's look at the passage, Ephesians 5:22. And you'll notice I have structured this husbands at the top and wives underneath that. And it's fascinating, both this passage and the one in Colossians both deal with the wife first and then the husband. And I have no idea why. No idea. I've often said this in congregations. Guys, if you've got any idea, please come speak to me. No one has ever spoken to me about why it could be, and we've no idea. God doesn't tell us, but it is the way it is. It deals with wives first, then husbands. Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. That is, wives, you don't need to submit to anyone else's husband. Not to your husband's brother, or your husband's father, or your husband's whatever, your own husband. One person, right? For, here's why, for the husband, think 4 fingers, the husband is the head of his wife, even as Christ is head of the church. Now, you could have gone man, but here the passage goes church. That is, there is a comparison between the headship between a husband and wife and the headship of Christ over his church. It gets more interesting than that. Even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior, the one who rescues. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. Here's the big question. What on earth is Paul by the Holy Spirit, or the Holy Spirit by Paul, saying to wives? What on earth is submission? You will notice down the bottom the 2 biblical roles of a wife, and I'll show you why in a moment. There's actually one. A submitter. We have no English word for that. Somebody who submits is called a... I have no idea. That's the best I could think of. And it comes from the Greek word hupotasso, meaning one who comes under voluntarily, one who comes in to support or to yield or to be a helper. Isn't that interesting? One who comes to assist her husband. Think way back to Genesis. But it doesn't say what she's to help with. It doesn't say what she's to yield to. Yes, to her husband, but to what? What is he supposed to do that she's supposed to submit and assist and yield to? Right? Doesn't say. Until you get to the husbands. And once you've got to the roles of the husband, then you come back to a wife submission and say, okay, once you understand this, now you get what this is. Which is why I'm puzzled as to why Paul or the Holy Spirit didn't begin with the husbands. Let's move on. Before we even clarify what that means, husbands, love your wives. And that's not husbands, love your many wives, right? That's one husband, love your single one wife. We're not reading polygamy into it. You'll see why in a moment. As Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own body. He who loves his wife, singular, loves himself. Now think about that. God is calling husbands to love their wives in the same way as Christ loves the church. Meaning, in order to understand this, you've got to go and ask the question, how did Christ love the church? And the answer, of course, is to death, right? He went to the cross to win for himself a bride, and the lobola was death. That's how he loves his wife. Moreover, that death does something to her. It sanctifies her. It washes her with water, the water of the word, so that he might make her holy completely for himself. This is a spotless bride. It's fascinating when you go back to the story of Abraham looking for a wife for Isaac, and the picture of Christ going to the woman at the well in John 4. In the Old Testament, you've got the pursuit of the ideal wife. It's fascinating. She's from the same family. She's an ideal wife. She covers her face before she sees her future husband. Remember all of that? Come John 4, Jesus pursues the worst possible person to include in his bride. It's fascinating that Christ doesn't pursue the ideal bride. He pursues a bride which he sanctifies and makes holy by his death. Husbands, how do you love your wives? In a way that is sanctifying, in a way that is redeeming. Keep reading. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. That is, the way you care for yourself is the way you care for her, and the way you care for her is the way you care for yourself. No difference. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes it and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church, because we are members of his body. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother, think back to Genesis 2, and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Now we're talking about a physical oneness, right? Husband and wife, you are to be intimate and have sex. Watch what happens next. This mystery is profound, and I'm saying that it refers to Christ and the church. The mystery is not so much that a husband and wife can be one flesh. The real mystery is that Christ can be in his bride, and the picture of marriage is representative of the real thing, which is Christ's love and pursuing love for his bride, the church. That's why I prayed as I did this morning, that marriages may be sustained because they are the picture of the love of Christ on earth. This is great, right? Husband and wife? This is great, I trust. But this isn't all there is. This is the picture of the real thing. This is the picture of the real thing. This isn't my marriage. This represents my marriage. This represents the love of Christ for his church. This mystery is profound, and I'm saying that it refers to Christ and the church. However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. There's kind of the quiet other second pointer down the bottom there. Respecter, or somebody who honors and respects her husband. We don't have an English word for that, so I made one up. Respecter. Somebody who respects her husband. By the way, you might be intrigued to know that under two biblical roles of the wife, you don't have the word love. Isn't that interesting? New Testament does not command wives to love their husbands. You might say, well, that seems a massive omission. Why? Because the way a wife is to love her husband, come back to verse 22, is the way she loves the Lord in the way she submits to the headship of Christ in her life. That is, you want to see if a wife loves her husband? Let's see how this works in their marriage. So, here we go. 5 roles of a husband. Trust you're turning to your bulletin. And if you haven't got one of those, I trust you can grab one still at the door. There are 5 biblical roles of a husband. We've looked at one of them, 2 of them here in this passage. That is, he is the lover. He is the one who is to love his wife. And that love is a never give up type of love. Now think Old Testament, the word for unfailing love, you would have read it many times in the Old Testament, the word chesed, that God's love never ever stops. It keeps on going. Husbands, love your wives like that. A lover. That is, he pursues her. Now, in our society, you will have noticed that sometimes, especially among younger people, there seems to be a flipping of the roles, as if she is to pursue him. That is not in Scripture. He is the one who is to take the first step. He is the one who is to initiate, to say, would you have a cup of coffee with me? By the way, coffee is a really wonderful way to begin a marriage. And pizza. Would you go out with me? Would you have a conversation with me? That's his job. That doesn't mean that a wife can't set her cap for him. That is, say all sorts of curious things like, if you were to phone me, this is my number. She can be creative about that. We're going to come to that in a moment. But here's the one, scripturally, that is to love his wife like Christ loves the church. That's your job. In fact, all the other roles are all bundled into husbands love your wives. So in many ways, a husband has one job. Ladies, you'll be smiling because you know your husband can't multitask. One job. You had one job, love your wife. The way you do that is the other 4 things. Secondly, that he is the head of a wife. The head of a wife is her husband. He is to lead. He is the leader. I have seen husbands that perceive the scriptural command to lead his wife as if he is to do that unilaterally and harshly. As if, I'm the leader, you shut up, I'm doing this. That is not the way you lead in love. The way you lead in love is, Kath, I think we should do this. What do you think? My wife is my best advisor. And she has certain gifts that are not mine. And I know what they are. So I'm definitely asking her when it comes to those things. Let me just talk about the aspect of money in a marriage. You may perceive the husband spends whatever he likes on whatever he likes, because he is the leader in the home and he can go home with whatever and say, as the husband and the leader, think 1 Corinthians 11:3, 1 Timothy 3:5, it is my responsibility and I've spent the money. We have a kind of safeguard in our marriage because I am not as good as my wife in terms of financial controls. So we have a rule in our family, in order that I may lead well, to say we will never ever spend a great amount of money without consulting one another. And that great amount of money can be as in the vicinity of 1,500 Rand, 2,000 Rand. Anything above that needs my wife's stamp of approval. Why? Because I've learned to lead with respect to my wife, whom I love very much. How do I love my wife? I do take initiative. Where are we going on holiday? Let's have a conversation about what we are to do here. But I'm not doing that all by myself. I'm doing the leading in a way that pursues the best interests of this family, and especially knowing how my wife is wired. Thirdly, protector. Husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman as the weaker vessel. About 3 months ago, perhaps 4 months ago, we dealt with this very subject at men's group, just in the next room. What does it mean for a wife to be the weaker vessel? It seems as if he's referring to the fact that she's not as strong as you, men. Therefore, God has equipped you physically to be the protector of your wife, both physically and in terms of the conversations you sometimes need to have, particularly pertaining to the in-laws. That's your job. There are times where my wife has come home near to tears or in tears because of something that happened at work, and often in terms of somebody who's in authority over her. And I then say, because I understand my role as protector, would you like me to get involved? Because it's my job to protect you emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Physically, Lance, you know it's your job to make sure the security gates are locked. It's my job. Why? Because biblically, I am to protect her. Emotionally, it is my job to make sure that I can help her as best I can in terms of her emotions, that she is not abused by other people. My job. And she will say to me on certain occasions, mostly it's, Lance, don't worry, I'll resolve this. But there are some times where I've needed to get involved. Very rarely. But also spiritually. I'm going to get to that one in a moment. But the husband is to be the spiritual protector of his wife. Think headship. That is, you have a responsibility under Christ to look after and care for your wife, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Fourthly, provider. 1 Timothy 5 verse 8. If anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for the members of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. There are times where your wife may earn more than you. That may happen. It might be for a lengthy period of time. It might be all your life. You will feel, as a husband, that you are neglecting your responsibility. Rightly so that you feel that. Because it's your job. That doesn't mean that you should resign and see if you can find an employment that will get above her. Because you are a team. You've got to make this closed company financially viable, right? You've got to make sure the business does not go under financially. That's your job, husbands. And it might be that she earns more than you. That's okay. God has gifted you with a wife that can earn an income. That's not a bad thing. But when it comes to making sure you don't go under, that's your job, husbands. You're to protect her financially. Lastly, the priest in the home. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Think headship again. By the way, this really works, doesn't it? The head of every man is Christ. The head of a wife is her husband. The head of Christ is God. 1 Corinthians 11 verse. 1 Corinthians 11 verse. Good. I want you to memorize it. This is helpful because this is so helpful in saying this is how God has ordered this. It works like this. Priests. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. As Christ loved the church. That's how you've got to think about this. How does Christ love the church? He wins her. John 17, prays for her. He speaks the truth to her. He prays to God for her. He leads by his godly example in the home. There are times where you will get stressed and your wife may say, husband, don't you think we should pray? And your answer is, absolutely we should, right? There are times when she will nudge you. We'll talk about that in a moment. But it is your job as the priest in the home to open Scripture, to answer as best you can the tough theological questions, and to lead your family to God as best you can. 1 Timothy 3, both for elders and for deacons, says that they should be able to govern their household well. That's elders and deacons. Now, does that mean the rest of the church can go crazy? No. It's a training ground. These are criteria by which these men can be elders, and these, in my case, men and women, can be deacons. Good. Let me come back to the role of the wife. If that's the role of the husband, what is the role of the wife? Shane, would you see if you can help me there? Oh, there we go. Great. Super. Thank you. Okay, that's 1 Corinthians. Let me go to the other one. That was the one I was looking for first. Did you see that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Let's go back to the other one. Thanks, Shane. If you can just flip back the other one. Good. If that's the role, 5 roles of a husband, what does it mean for a wife to submit? I put it to you, it does not mean she is to do everything her husband tells her to do. You might think that's crazy. You're hearing it, Germiston Baptist Church, from this pulpit. That is, his 5 roles are these 5. Her submission is to his 5 roles. Does that make sense? So, if the husband is to be the lover and to pursue her, she's not going to play hard to get too much or too hard, right? She is to give in to his love. Right? Does that make sense? If he is to be the lover and the one who seeks to win her to himself, she's going to let herself be won. Leader. If he's the leader, what is she? Not the anti-leader, right? Not the rebellious push-off husband, right? She's the one who's going to be led by him. That's what it means to submit. If he's the protector, what is she? She's the one who enjoys being protected. Husband, this is your job. And sometimes he needs a nudge to know this is your job. And she's going to say, husband, Your job is to be the protector. My job is to be the one who is protected by you. Right? Number 4, the provider. Husband, our closed company is going into bankruptcy as a family. What are we going to do? Husband, it's your job. And I'm going to enjoy using your credit card as I like. I'm going to enjoy the fact that you are a provider, primarily. I'm going to help you. I'm going to see how we can do this together, if needs be. Husbands are the priest. What does it mean for the wife? She's the one who's saying, don't you think we need to pray? Don't you think we should, I know we've stopped our family devotions, that we should restart. Don't you think we should be thinking about how to do this together? I really like the fact that these things are umbrellas, and here's why. If a husband is like the 5 spines on an umbrella, the role of a wife is to have her hand on the spindle that opens up the umbrella. That's her job. That is, she comes under the umbrella, right? But she's also the one who's nudging up her husband to say, come on, husband, this is your job. How can I help you do this? That's the meaning of submission. Hupotasso, somebody who comes under and is a helper and kind of thinks, how do I help you do your job? So I've said a husband has 5 roles. I've also said a wife has 1. This says 2 because I do think a respecter comes under a submitter. I think those 2. In the same way as a husband is to love, the other 4 come under that. A submitter by the wife means she is going to respect her husband. And it's a part of a leadership thing, isn't it? If you're to lead, I'm going to respect your leadership. I'm not going to be trying to subversively trying to bring your leadership down or to drag you through the mud in our friend circle. My husband thinks he's the leader. What sort of leader is this? Ha, ha, ha. That's not what's going to happen. Thus, the wife has technically 1 job also, to submit. Do not please think that it means she is to be a slave, but rather to help him slide that spindle up such that he can take care of his 5 responsibilities and enjoy being out of the rain and thunder underneath the umbrella. By the way, he's under the umbrella too, right? He's also there. He's next to it. Now think of a couple walking down the road and it's raining and they're using 1 umbrella. That's how you should see marriage. 1 umbrella shared together. You sliding, I'm trying to open, and together we've got 1 task to exercise the biblical roles that God has given us, and we both win. Let me close with this. I have seen a husband not take care of 1 or more of his responsibilities. Very often, when I do marriage counseling, all sorts of things, there's 1 or more of these responsibilities that over the years he's neglected. And as a result, she has been impacted negatively. Usually by the fact that she does not feel loved. Usually. To which I then say, husband, isn't it your job? How's it going with loving your wife? Physically, emotionally, spiritually, caring for her, thinking about how best you can help her feel loved. Help her feel loved. Yes, you do love her, but that's not how it works in a wife's mentality. Yes, you tell her you love her, but she has to feel loved. It's no good you tell her you love her. If she does not feel loved, you're not taking care of your job. She has to feel it. Thus, you're thinking about how I can help my wife feel loved. Sometimes I'll do the dishes, or I'll do jobs that I don't really want to do, but I'm helping my wife. I'm saying, on occasion, the only reason I'm doing this is because I love you. Feel free to do that, because she needs to know how you feel about her. And very often, when a wife does not feel loved, she will withdraw from her husband, and before you know it, they are heading in two different directions. I always say, when a husband is taking care of his 5 roles, she knows it and feels it and loves what is going on in her husband's life. It's a bit like an airplane that spirals upwards or spirals downwards. And before you know it, you're going to hit the ground in your marriage. And I've seen that spiral. To which I then say, how's it going? What's happening in your marriage? It could be, and I put it to you in closing, that the reason why Scripture deals with the wife first and then the husband, it could be because of what it says in Peter, that a wife can win over a husband to the Lord by her submission without a word. That is, who has more ability to make this plane go up in the spiral? I think the wife does. I think the wife does. That doesn't mean husbands, you can get off the hook and, I've got 4 or 5, but we'll just ignore the first 4 or 3. In fact, I'll just do number 4. It does not mean that. But I do think that a wife that is submissive can win over a husband to taking care of his 5 roles better than a husband who takes care of his 5 roles and the wife just is not interested. And it could be that that's why the Holy Spirit says to wives first and then to husbands, this is how it works in marriage. I don't know. But I do know that a wife can win her husband by her submission without even a word. And I find that very interesting. Friends, that's it. Let me encourage you, take this, put it on your fridge. Use it as you see fit. And may God help you. Let's pray. Father, I do thank you so much that you know what you're doing in the way you've designed a man and a woman, in the way you've brought them together in a marriage, and the roles you assign to each. You know exactly what you're doing. We've seen, oh God, a biblical marriage where a husband takes care of his roles in not just a way that is obedient to the Lord, but in a way that honors you by his obedience, seeking your glory in that home. We've also seen the opposite of marriages that really battle. I want to pray, oh God, would you please give an ability to obey, a desire to obey, a desire to honor you. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. Would you help husbands and wives honor you by the way they love and treat each other? I pray especially for the attack of the evil one against marriages, not only in this church but across our country. Oh God, I pray, protect them. Help us as husbands to be able to speak honestly and openly with our wives. Help our wives to receive and to appreciate and reciprocate in terms of their role as well. Thank you, Lord, for our time together. Bless us now, O God, we pray, as we seek to do these things for your honor and glory. In your name, amen. Good. As we did this morning, won't you stand? Won't you join hands? You guys are on board. Good. Won't you receive the benediction? And now, to him who is able to keep you from stumbling and to present you blameless before the presence of his glory with great joy, to the only God our Savior, through Jesus Christ our Lord, be glory and majesty, dominion and authority before all time and now and forever. And all God's people said, Amen.